When doing development, most people will plug the Z1 into an external power source like this Anchor Power Port 4. When doing development, you often want to power the camera indefinitely and just leave it on for development. The Z1 has two different power states. One is sleep and the other one is powered off. I just woke the camera up from sleep. To power off the camera, you must long press it longer than 8 seconds, and then you'll see this red flashing light when the camera is powering off. Then you have to long press it again to turn it on, and it does take several seconds. And then when it boots this time, you'll see a blue flashing light on the front of the camera. So this is a different behavior than you would see when it's waking up from sleep. You'll also notice that the blue flashing light does take quite a while for the camera to get into a fully booted state. Now that you understand that there's two different power modes, one sleep delay and the other is off delay, we're going to use the RICOH Theta API test kit. Just put an email in here at this site, and you can then immediately go to a download page. There's no waiting or confirmation. And let's download the Windows RICOH Theta ATK Flutter, which is the first one, and it'll run on the Windows desktop. It's a zipped archive, so you'll need to extract it, and do make sure that you do extract it, and you'll save it into a separate folder in your downloads folder or wherever you think is convenient. Once it's fully extracted, then you should see this icon. It's going to let you know that it doesn't recognize the publisher because we don't have it in the Windows Store. But if you accept it, then you'll be able to use this tool here, which will make the exploration of the off delay and sleep delay a little bit easier. You're going to need to connect your Windows computer to the camera using Wi-Fi. The camera is at 192.168.1.1. The IP address in this situation cannot be changed. Once it's set up, then you can start pressing some of the buttons, including seeing all of the settings on the Z1. And we'll check out sleep delay and see what it's set to. You can see in the documentation that 65535 will disable it. The documentation says V or later, and that does include the Z1 in this case. So you can disable it either by setting the sleep delay to 0 or that long number. I started searching around for off delay, and I saw that it was set for 64,800, which is a little surprising because that's a pretty big number. It didn't seem like that would be the default setting, or that's also not a no off, right? So it's kind of an odd number. And that's about 18 hours. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe with just a random number here that got put into the Z1 configuration when we were doing some testing on it. So I decided to reset the Z1 and see what happens. So I did a reset on the Z1, and I did notice that the off delay again is set to 64,800 seconds, which is 18 hours. I'm suspicious, so I decided to reset the camera again, and again it's set to 64,800. I even asked my friend to test it. My friend using a different Z1 had the same results. So now I switched the cameras. I'm using a RICOH Theta V with firmware 3.70.1, I think. It's the newest firmware for the Theta V. The Theta V is an older model. It's using the same operating system basically as the Z1. So it's kind of a good test to see what the expected behavior should be. So I'm going to reset the RICOH Theta V and see what happens here. The API is largely the same, so you could use the same admin panel to send the camera.reset, and then that should reboot the Theta V as it's rebooting now. To actually see the settings, we'll use another tool. To inspect the settings of the RICOH THETA V, I'm actually going to use the command line tester op theta. So I'm going to run it from the Windows command line. I download it, then I extract it. I think I have it just in the downloads folder. So within there, I'm going to go into the command line, the command prompt, and then cd into this area, and let's see what happens. To use any of the tools, the camera does have to be connected to the computer with Wi-Fi. So make sure the Wi-Fi is up and that you selected the RICOH Theta as the hotspot. Once the connection is set, you can then use this command line tool, go into the directory that you just extracted, which is going to be op theta, and then run it from the command line. The command that we want will be get options. So if you type the command with no options, it will give you the help menu, but it's get options. Then you have to actually do hyphen options. So the option that we want will be off delay. So the syntax is the name of the command, get options, hyphen options, and then the name of the option we want, which is off delay. And oddly enough, it is 64,800. So at this stage, I'm wondering, do all the RICOH Thetas, does it set the default off delay to 64,800, which is 18 hours? So it's set to connect it to SC2B. Make sure you're connected to the network security key and not the pin. If you notice, the first screen that popped open was the pin. That's not the correct screen. You have to connect to the network security key. Once you're connected to the RICOH Theta, and this would be the same for any RICOH Theta model. It's not specific to the SC2B. It's just I previously had connected to the other models before, and for the SC2B, I haven't connected in a while, so my system forgot. So once I'm connected to the SC2B, I can test it out, make sure that I'm connected. The firmware is a little old, but I think I'll test it first. And if it's giving me something reasonable, like 600 seconds, which is what I would expect for the off delay, or 10 minutes, then I'll upgrade the firmware. Right now, the off delay is actually disabled because I was doing some testing on it before, and so it is likely not the default settings for the SC2B. It's likely been saved with some different parameters for testing purposes. If you recall from earlier in the video, 65535 will disable the automatic power off. So for development purposes, usually you want to disable it. So it was disabled, but what I really want to see is what is the default off delay of the RICOH Theta SC2B. So I reset it, it automatically will power off, and so in this case for the SC2B, I have to press the power button, it comes back on, then I have to reconnect it to Wi-Fi. It's all pretty standard, so no surprises here. Since I've already connected with the network key, not the pin, it's already saved in my Windows settings here. So now I can check it out and see where we're at here. So I can use the same SC2 settings in this case, and we'll see where we're at here. It looks like it's set to 600. Okay, so now I'm wondering if the behavior of the camera has changed with newer firmware upgrades. So I'm going to upgrade the SC2B to the newest firmware. I've connected it to my Windows computer with a USB cable. I'm using the desktop application, which you can download from the RICOH site, theta360.com, the downloads portion. And I'm using this free desktop software to do the upgrade. After it downloads the firmware into the SC2B over the USB cable, it's going to give you this little informational screen here that says to disconnect the SC2B from the USB cable. It should be in a power off mode. So we're going to need to turn off the SC2B and disconnect it from the USB cable, then power it back on. So for the upgrade, I'm going to first turn it off with the power button on the side of the camera. Then I'll unplug the micro USB cable from the bottom of the camera. It was previously connected to my Windows computer. Then when I power it on again, it does do this unique boot sequence where it does flash between the image and the video icon over here in the lower left hand corner of the screen. You can see that it's doing the upgrade internally because it's flashing between the image icon and the video icon. Once it's fully upgraded, it will then reboot. The Wi-Fi is off, so I'm going to have to press the side button to turn on the Wi-Fi, so then I can reconnect it to my computer to do additional API testing. So after the camera reboots, I reconnect the Windows computer to the camera. Then I run the get options call again. Just make sure that's connected with info. The firmware has been upgraded. Everything looks good. So let's see what the options have been set to. Well, it looks like the off delay is 600 seconds, but maybe it was saved, before the firmware upgrade. So I'm going to reset the camera again. And now let's recheck it and see what happens. So after the reset and then the reconnection of the camera again to the Windows computer so I can recheck it, then I look at the settings again. So I just clicked it again. I notice that it's still at 600. So the off delay with this firmware and this setup, it's still at 600 here. So it's kind of what I would expect, right? It being at 10 minutes here. So I think what I'm going to do is actually ask some people I know at RICOH whether this is the normal behavior or the expected behavior for the V and the Z1. It's just interesting if you're a developer to know. You can of course just set it to 600 or 10 minutes if you want to, but 18 hours, it's not really completely off. The battery will drain, but it's not indefinite. Hopefully I'll get more info, and if so, I'll make another video. So subscribe to the channel so you can see the future updates.